So yesterday we got the announcement that Frank Warren is going to have his first show on DAZN come April. He will be, Queensberry will be broadcasting their shows from DAZN, no longer with TNT. That means they join the likes of Matchroom, obviously, GBM, Golden Boy, who are now broadcasting on DAZN. Now, Frank Warren, although GBM are very good, and they put on some good cards, some very good domestic European level type cards. They're very, very good. They are still quite a small organisation. They really are. So a lot of their fighters, a lot of their shows are really viewed by the hardcores. So when you look at kind of, the crossover section where you're talking about hardcores, casuals, and a little bit in between, it tends to be the Frank Warrens, the Eddie Hearns. If you want to look at Sky, the Ben Shaloms, etc., etc., etc. We all know those type of guys, the mainstream ones, so to speak. And yeah, they do good stuff too. Now, Frank Warren is going to be on DAZN alongside Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn was the first boxing promoter, so to speak, to go with DAZN. It was him, then it was Golden Boy, and so on and so forth. They've had like others. I think Triple G put on some shows. I know he was kind of doing when he was fighting. I don't think he'd ever officially retired, but you know what I mean. I think they've even put on some USEC 17 shows, I think from Ukraine or certainly somewhere like that on DAZN. So you'll always see some kind of boxing. But in terms of major promoters, it's always been primarily Eddie Hearn with Oscar De La Hoya in there as well. And now we have Frank Warren. Certainly when it comes to the UK shows, it's going to be between Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren. But it has me wondering, I'm not going to say he is. I'm asking the question, right? To understand, it's very different between me saying this is happening. I'm asking the question, do you think now this is the moment where Eddie Hearn does really step his game up with Matchroom? Because I, for one, for the last, say, year or so, the Saudi shows, fine. The American shows, fine. They've been pretty good. And same with the Australian shows, actually, for that matter. They've been pretty good over there as well. But the UK show, the UK audience, which is really what Matchroom start, and I know they've gone, Eddie Hearn would say he's gone global, but Frank Warren, to his credit, is signing, Cuban fighters and etc. So who's to say he won't be doing shows in the States? And he has kind of hinted that, it might not be all in the UK, it might be somewhere else. Eddie Hearn in the UK, any kind of decent card, certainly over the last 12 to 18 months or so, any decent fight card has gone on the UK, has had a pretty lackluster undercard. And then the other big card that you think would be an O2 Arena, an OVO, everyone's loving the Co-op Arena now. A lot of those fights are being pushed out and moved to Saudi. Like, I'll give you an example. If you want to do Dave Allen versus Johnny Fisher, that happened on the undercard of Fury versus Usyk. Great fight, don't get me wrong. But it happened in Saudi Arabia. Surely that would have been a day out at the O2, would it not? Now we may, because there's talk about rematch, we may very well get that at the O2. But even when we had even when we had Johnny Fisher, Alan Babbage, name me a fight from that undercard you remember. And I'm struggling to think of one too. Felix Cash, Tyler Denny. Name me a fight from the undercard, please. I'm struggling here. It's been that way for a while. Whereas if you look at some of in particular the Magnificent Sevens, you could say, it was Denzel Bentley versus Brad Pauls. That had on the undercard Lawrence Okoli versus that Hashma. How would you say that guy's name? But it had Lawrence Okoli on it. You'd also seen Joe Joyce in some of these. They're much more stacked together cards. So with Frank Warren, he's actually, and this was with TNT, he was taking the UK shows. He wasn't just putting all the big fights and all the good fights that can be made. I'll give you an example. At this time, roughly a year to the date, we had Liam Williams versus Hamza Shiraz. We had Anthony Yarden, the undercard. We also had, I can see him, but for some reason I can't put his name to it. A very, very talented fighter as well. But you get what I mean. You can remember a lot of the fights that were on those undercards. Whereas with Eddie Hearns lately, it's just been like, here's the main event and then see you later. He's already done a show this year in the O2 with the Indigo, which again, and not a lot of people were really talking about. Even some of Frank Warren's shows, the Queensberry shows that he did in the York Hall on a Friday. Dennis McCann versus Eno Balute, the first fight. That was in the York Hall on a Friday night, not last year, the year before, but nevertheless, you still remember it was a really good card. It was a really good fight as well. And those shows he's doing in the York Hall, they're really, really good. And he's hitting the ground running with DAZN. He's putting on a massive heavyweight show for his first fight. He's putting on what I think has the potential to be fight of the year between Anthony Kakache and Lee Wood. That's going to be epic. Just think in Nottingham, Belfast, Nottingham. Last time that happened, we know what happened. And then go up to Glasgow. Oh boy, that's going to be fun up there, where Josh Taylor is fighting Echo Usman. And this is just starting out with the zone of Frank Warren. People, whether you like to hear it or not, that pales into Eddie Hearn's shows pale into insignificance in comparison to these. And I know they had a representative from the DAZN at the press conference yesterday, and he was saying, there won't be any rivalries or this, that, and the other. But if you think of it like this, if you're looking at a Matchroom show, and it's amazing the way the roles have reversed, and you're looking at a Matchroom UK show, Felix Cash, what's he doing? And I never really rated Felix Cash. Johnny Fisher, really. Katie Taylor, don't know what she's going to do anytime soon. She's been fighting on bigger shows in America, like Jake Paul's undercard. Sky Nicholson's in Australia. Most of his, I'm having to resort to international fighters now. Giorgio Visioni, people like that, they're up and comers. They're still up and comers. Delicious Ori went with Queensbury. Ben Whittaker is with Boxer. He might not always be with Boxer, but for now he's with Boxer. Dylan White, a Matchroom fighter. Well, although he was always fighting on a fight-by-fight basis, still, there you go. Joshua, likelihood is he's going to be part of Riyadh season. So where is the core UK shows for Eddie Hearn? And look at Frank Warren's UK shows. They are knocking him out of the park. Eddie Hearn, he's doing a very, very good show in, I think, is it in Philadelphia, if I'm not mistaken? Oh no, the Broadwalk Hall in Atlantic City, New Jersey, which Boots Ennis is going to be on. His shows internationally, they're pretty good now, to be fair, they are. But Eddie Hearn will always be, for me, the UK guy from Essex who came in, he really upset the establishment, and he did his own thing. I still want that, and I think we still need that to an extent. I think Eddie Hearn needs to do his UK shows, and I think they need to be really good. At the end of the day, Mick Conlon versus Lee Wood, that happened in the UK. Great show, flipping great show. Josh Warrington versus Mauricio Lara, both times, once behind closed doors, the second one at Headingley. All these shows, when he did Fowler versus Liam Smith, do you remember on the undercard of that fight we had Ted Cheeseman versus Troy Williamson? We're not getting cards like that anymore. Now you could say again, the pool of fighters Eddie Hearn has, certainly UK based, is not what it once was. Frank Warren's really taken a lot of them, but Eddie Hearn is more of a global promoter now. But as I said, nevertheless, in terms of the UK based fights, Frank Warren is he is tearing him up at the minute. And I do wonder if the DAZN are going to look and see, well, look, Eddie's doing, Johnny Fisher versus Dave Allen too. Okay, and just that. Okay, Frank Warren is doing Dylan White versus Joe Joyce, Lawrence Okoli versus Richard Riakpor, Jamie TKV versus David Adelaide, Delicious Ori, just to name a few. You never know, Moses Telma might spring up an appearance on one of those cards. You can't compare them. It's just, you can't. So I wonder, is Eddie Hearn, I'm not going to say is he under pressure or something like that. Again, I'm not saying it as a matter of fact. I'm asking the question. There's a big difference between me saying he's under pressure and me just saying, could he be? Is it? Do you think that goes into his mind? Who knows? A lot of people, even in the Element group that I'm in, Hatman's Element group, you people in there saying that they think Eddie Hearn is checked out mentally from boxing. I don't think he has necessarily. I know he's got other avenues. I know darts is really, when people say like, oh, Matchroom's no, Matchroom's strong. It has the snooker, it has the darts, which is doing amazing work. You had Sky having to outbid Netflix just to keep the darts on there. Luke Little Mania and stuff like that. So Matchroom's doing absolutely fine as a business. Nothing wrong there. But Eddie Hearn's drive for boxing, I don't necessarily think it's going, but he does have other areas to go down should he need it. That does make me wonder. That's all I'm asking. So let me know your thoughts. Frank Warren on the DAZN now, hitting the ground running. And is he leaving Eddie Hearn, certainly in terms of domestic fights, domestic cards, in the dust? Should he be worried? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed the video, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. Until next time, people, I'll leave it there.